I am rarely freaked out about anything. I've heard everything. I've heard every conceivable story and conspiracy theory and any, you name it, from deep state to the old South. I don't care what it is. This one today, this story boggled my mind. Enough with the proem, enough with the prolegomenon and the intro. Joining me right now is a man we will call Thomas Paine. The Thomas Paine and Betsy Ross do an absolute must subscribe to a video platform, a news platform called American Intelligence Media. They also have aimfortruth.org. Mr. Paine, welcome, sir.
Lionel, it is an honor to be on your show. I just want to tell you that myself, Art Conclave, and Betsy, we turn to you when we want to become enlightened or lighten up the serious work that we do. We actually play your videos as an antidote to the oppression of the world. Thank you so much for having us on.
Well, let me just say something right now that it is the greatest. There is no such thing as political comedy anymore. Just tell people this, and it's so absurd that people laugh, perhaps nervously. Let's get down to brass tacks. Thomas Paine, your best video is you and Betsy have uncovered who Big Brother is. Now, by the way, lactating women and people with pacemakers should consult with their physicians before listening to this. Send the kids out, wake Annie M and Grams. This will blow your mind. Now, let us begin with that. Proceed, sir.
Well, I know you're right. It's the most shocking truth bomb we have discovered. And we discovered it by accident. Our friends down at the American for Innovation, the people who actually invented the patent and the base code for the social networking, which created the ability for all of this to happen. We work with those people. They're not only patent lawyers and geniuses and tech geniuses, but they look into the dirt. And if you go to their site, they got a whole long timeline of every indictable offense of the people you and I know of that cabal of Washington, D.C.
Tell me the site again for that, please.
Americans, and then the number 4, just like we have a 4 in ours, aimfortruth.org. Theirs is Americans for Innovation.
Okay.
And they have a timeline, as well as many articles. But they basically had a group called the IBM Eclipse Foundation steal their social networking, right? Patent. And they worked with a guy named James Chandler, he was in the National Security Council. He's one of the top patent lawyers in America, still is. He was the teacher of course, I won't give her a moniker, but we'll just say Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton worked with Rose in law firm in Little Rock, Arkansas. They basically learned to control all the patents for all the big technology that was coming. After the Bushes had ripped off the oil and the gold, there was still tech left. Well, then the Bushes ripped off uranium, but the uranium deal, the Uranium One deal went back to George H.W. Bush, who set up the uranium coming out of Russia into America. That's when the whole thing started. No one's even addressing that. But we address it in our citizens intelligence reports. And also twice a day, we post kind of an aggregate of news called Truth News Headlines. And in there, we show through our intelligence reports the details I'm not going to give you, because when you hear what I'm about to say, you're going to say in your what do you call it? Your conspiratorium?
My conspiratorium, members of the clerisy, yes. The literati, the enlightened, yes.
Well, what our job is to look into those conspiracies and then prove them so that people like yourself, when you say, yes, the Rothschilds control central banks, no, we need to know that they control 87 of the 127 banks, and we need to name the name of those countries, and that's what we do in our reports. When we say military-industrial complex, we tell you the exact people, the exact dates, exact everything, indictable information. We're not playing games. My conclave that I work with, and I'm the spokesperson for, has people at the top level of government, in the military especially, and intelligence especially, but also lawyers, active lawyers. I can call some up right now and say, how many people are at Gitmo? And I will know. And all those other people, I'm not ever going to say that. I'm not going to ever use insider information. I'm not going to use anything that isn't open source, because you can go to jail for that. And we respect law. And the lawlessness of the White House since George H.W. Bush has led to the fact that Big Brother wrote a patent, but you have to understand how that patent was written. You have to go back to 1993, and the people I'm going to list, you are not going to believe, and you will have to go to our intelligence reports to check this because you will believe that I'm lying. But in 1993, when IBM was ready to sell their computers to the rest of the world, the NSA had to put a back door in it. They had to put a zero chip. They had to put a remote control, and they had to put a back door so that they could surveil without being tracked. In 1993, they began this. The people who began it, John Podesta, Robert Mueller, James Comey, Hillary Clinton, George H.W. Bush through the Carlyle Group, later Robert Mueller. Well, Robert Mueller was there from the beginning. What am I saying? Larry Sumner, David Kappos, now the head of the Patent Office, which is completely corrupt and has been ever since. He went over from 22 years at IBM to the Patent Office, then created a thing called IBM Eclipse Foundation, which then controlled all technology, which is now controls the world. Those are Silicon Valley boy kings, cardboard cutout jokes. Dude Zuckerberg doesn't know anything about writing source code. There's no proof Dude Zuckerberg has ever written a single line of code. And when he speaks, it seems evident he doesn't even know what his company.
Larry and Sergey, or whoever the hell they are, these wonderful little Potemkin villages, these shills, imposters, synthetic, artificial counterfeit heads, titular. They look terrific. They humanize Facebook. They make it hip. You can look at this guy. I absolutely, especially not to, and please forgive me, I'm going to apologize a priori when I jump ahead. Remember when, December 21st, when Trump signed that executive order and Eric Schmidt's out the door from Alphabet, it's even beyond that. So what you see in TV and news and CNN and MSDNC, that is the Hollywood version of reality. Proceed, sir. I'm sorry.
No, you do what Betsy does, because I go off in the weeds and I have too many details as a spokesperson for all these brainy, heady people. There's so many details in my head that I have to memorize to be able to present their story and to frame their story that I often go off in the weeds. So please pull me back.
Oh, no. You're in the weeds. I'm in the parking lot of the weeds. So between us, but let me just say when I read this, I had to stop. I'm reading this thing, and we have talked before, and I'm at the gym this morning. I thought, oh my God, it's like, I'm out of here. I'm back. Let's do it now. This is, okay, I keep wetting the whistle of people or the taste buds. All right, proceed, sir. Now.
That's because if they don't open their minds, they won't be able to comprehend what I'm saying, and I usually speak quite fast. So let's do what you just pointed at. Eric Schmidt, let's talk about him and Google for a second. That'll be the perfect example of what I'm saying happened in 1993. We'll go to 93, then we'll go to the Eclipse IBM Foundation, the way they took over social networking, and then the way out of Hewlett-Packard, a man named Richard Walker was targeted as the new Silicon Valley boy king, who then they give a patent, which is the patent of all things. It's the Internet of Things in a patent. It is so broad that it encompasses microchipping human beings, their dogs, their animals, even trees as sensors. The QRS-11 is what led us into this, and I'll tell that story because that story, we heard a conspiracy theory. We thought Abel Danger's Field McConnell story was a conspiracy theory, so we looked into it accidentally, and we found out it was more than true. And it has blown our mind and led to probably 4 or 5 of the largest breaking stories that we have released.
Now, you do know,
years.
now, just for clarification, you do know, number one, the conspiracy theory does not mean, it's used as a synonym for false. As the great Gore Vidal said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy analyst. There are conspiracies. It does not mean fictional, fictive, fanciful, crazed, imaginary, lunatic. It's been, the word was weaponized, as you know, in 1967 by the CIA to counter people who didn't believe a word of the Warren Commission, including Earl Warren. So they said, we're going to use this term conspiracy theory. And in this memo drafted by the CIA, it shows how you can weaponize the word and basically attack people who dare to question the sagacity and the alleged truth of the government. So it's a conspiracy. two or more people confederated with the goal of something evil, that's a conspiracy. And I've represented and prosecuted people who are in prison today for conspiracies. So it's very, very real, lest we forget.
Let's remember Paul Manafort and Richard Gates have been charged with conspiracy.
Right, and let's also
By
forget...
the Mueller investigation.
But remember, let's also go back. Manafort and Gates, pre-Trump. Now, let me also say, this is not a pro-Trump thing. This isn't about Trump. Trump can help things, but this transcends the Article 2 president. This is true deep state. But remember, that was pre-Trump. The only two people indicted so far by Mueller in this ridiculous, whatever this attempt was to secure justice, is basically Papadopoulos and General Flynn, both of them, Thomas Paine, charged with and pled guilty to lying to the federal government, lying to the FBI. So when your main witness has pled guilty to lying, your first question in cross-examination is, Mr. Paine, you lied. Yes. You lied and you pled guilty to lying and you were fired by Vice President Pence because you lied? But we're supposed to believe you today. Oh, okay, I got it. Thanks. You're a witness. But before, prefatory, because whoever these people are, evil, the deep state, want to control a full spectrum, 24/7, panopticon, the idea of the prison where the guard is in the middle and can see everyone, every human being on a 24/7 real-time worldview grid. Everybody implanted, their phone surveillance units, their cars, their passports, their licenses, their credit cards, subcutaneous, perhaps RFID chips. Everybody, and more importantly, forget tracking. But since the body is basically a capacitor or whatever it is, a kind of a transistor, whatever of carbon and tissue and water, you can, again, calling into, reference MK Ultra and its progeny, the potentially of not only tracking people, but controlling people, controlling planes, people, cars, cargo ships, tracking, controlling, turning on, turning off, in utilizing this Internet of Things. And again, I will not interrupt. I'm sorry. Proceed. I'm sorry.
No,
it's just
if
killing
you call
me.
that an interruption, I call that absolutely nailing on the head what we're trying to communicate here. And with the proper emotion, the proper delivery, because I may be delivering it rather deadpan here because there's so many details. So what you said is so true. The straw that broke the camel's back of the conspiracy between the DOJ and the FBI is Devin Nunes's memo. That memo is going to make that entire conspiracy that's been going on for 2 years dissolve in the air immediately. We have already stated and talked about everything that's probably going to be in those 1,700, actually 2,000 pages that were condensed into this compilation, this memo. Well, that's what happened when we found the patent. This patent was hidden, 170 pages with 660 extra pages. That's the longest patent we've ever seen in history. It covers everything, all the things you've mentioned and more. So let me set the stage. Eric Schmidt is a stooge. He's smart. He came through Bell Labs. He came through all of the militarized parts of the government corporation, what we would call the military-industrial complex. The AT&T was owned by the government. It was a monopoly. Bell was owned by the government. It was a monopoly. We have to look at the fact that there are still monopolies going on, and that's what I'm about to tell you. Some years ago, the Department of Defense, through the DARPA, the Defense Agency Research Project, the Defense Advanced Agency Research Project, which they then put out ideas of what they want to have done. Corporations come in, they bid for the contracts, they work on it. That's how it works now. Before that, they simply went to universities. The internet was DARPANet to begin with. I was actually around in those days, working for the NSA. And so I saw this stuff develop. We really didn't think that it would ever be used by the civilians because it's a weapon. It was always a weapon. Information on that level, unchecked, becomes a weapon. Because is it true or not? Is it manipulation? Is it propaganda? What is it? Yellow journalism? We knew from the beginning, only military got onto the DARPANet in those days. So when it was released through Stephen Crocker, who controlled the ICANN numbers, the IP address numbers, who was there in 1993 with John Podesta, Rod Rosenstein. Let's not forget some of the players. They're the same exact players going on now. So when you say they want full spectrum control, that means patents, that means economy, that means when you say patents, you're talking about the largest amounts of money put into these tech companies since an IBM was what? A government. It was basically the government owned IBM. When I was in the NSA, when I got out, who do you think I worked for? The higher branch of intelligence. GE, Honeywell, Digital, IBM. That's who really runs things. The corporate world, there's a corporate battle going on. And industrial espionage, patent espionage. What is Hillary Clinton? Not only is she the daughter of a mob boss from Chicago, she was then put in as a what? Infringement patent lawyer. What's the number one way you make money in being a lawyer? Infringement on patents, because you can now do trolling and you can make as much money as you want by trolling any patent you want. And we don't even control the patent office anymore. It's controlled by a company called Serco, S-E-R-C-O. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But it was controlled later, early on, by James Chandler, who was on the National Security Council. He was there in 1963. He was there when IBM said, well, we want to make these computers. They said, no. You can't give the computers to humans. And we'll let you send them to foreign countries as a weaponized tool, but we're certainly not going to let you just give this out to people to be used. So they built in, as I said, zero-day off switches, backdoors, and remotes. Now we know Intel, we've been preaching this for 2 years. We were one of 2 articles on the internet. Intel has a chip on it that is a remote control chip called ME. It's always been there. They admit it. It's in the user agreement. You sign for this. The second you turn it on, you agree for them to have what's called the mechanical engine control everything on your computer. That is called aggressive remote control. That is part of the patent I'm talking about. The patent, which name is Point Focal Node Trusted Remote Access Control. Okay, it's just a bunch of letters.
That PFN
track, TRIC. Now, what is that? It's aggressive remote control. So when we ran into Able Danger site and we heard that somehow Hillary Clinton had ripped off his sister over a patent called the QRS-11, and then we heard him say that there's a thing on every plane called the uninterruptible autopilot, and that there was this group called the Senior Executive Service. We said, are any of these things true? We looked and we found they were all true. Worse than you can imagine. So when we looked into where QRS-11 came from, it came from Little Rock, and one particular guy who happened to have invented these amazing things that were then used by the NSA. And so also the heads of the NSA, the heads of FBI, CIA were all there in 1993. They all worked together. There was no formalization. It was the first encryption conference because they had to encrypt things. So they said, well, who's going to control the encryption codes? It had to be the NSA. They've always been. There's no such thing as a device that the NSA can't open. That's a complete lie. We know that from Vault 7 now and all the reveals, but this has been known since Stellar Wind. It's been known since Prism. It's been known since all of it. So anyway, the point is, same group of people, they control the patent office through IBM. They get together the people who are having trouble. Well, let's go back to QRS-11. QRS-11 is a very complicated crystal that is a gyroscope, and it can tell wherever you're at, left, right, up, down, forward, backward, speed, and altitude. And it can control it. And you can push a button, there's a microchip in it, and it turns it off. And the plane comes down. Your car goes off. Your motorcycle stops. It's in every moving device. It's in every bus. It's in everything. It's even in cable cars. It's in everything. It's in every missile. It's in every defense missile. It's in everything that flies. It's in everything. Now, how did this happen? Because from the beginning, Arkansas was the center of amazing corruption when Bill Clinton came there. And it wasn't by accident that they came to Rose Law Firm, Hillary Clinton did, because she was sent there, because they knew this was going to be the center of patent.
Mina, for people who don't know this, and now let me just stop you just for a second. Do you know what you've just... If I sat somebody right now, I said, listen, every time Thomas Paine says something, every time he mentions a name, a function, a fact, something that will cause you to lose control of your bodily functions and become incontinent, I want you to click this button so we can stop him and say, okay, Payne, you just gave me 300 of these things. Now, can we go back? You throw things. No. This is great. This is great. You throw things out. Now, just before we forget here, because I'm trying my best as the trial lawyer to say, because I got this jury listing, and they're saying,
Yes.
what the hell's going on? I don't want to go too much into it, but you were with NSA. Now, let me tell you something. Everybody seems to be on TV. Everybody's on the NSA and the CIA. So you were with the NSA. No, but it's true. I know people that's like,
I know.
What did you
they're
do?
frauds. The second they open their mouth and they say, I was with NSA in Fort Bragg. No, they weren't. There was no NSA in Fort Bragg. I was the one person sent to NSA in Fort Bragg in 1974. Don't tell me you were there doing work, because you weren't.
But don't people, but somebody's going to be saying, listen, Payne, somebody's going to be knocking on the door and say, say on the internet, would somebody go talk to Payne and shut him up and say, geez, you're going to look, how can you be, I'm sorry to say this, but you know how people are. How can you be alive and saying all this stuff? Aren't you afraid?
Because from the beginning, yes. No, I've been afraid since I got out of the NSA. I'll tell you a simple story. Got out of the NSA. I wasn't allowed to go into to Germany, behind the Iron Curtain. But East Berlin, isn't it? That was free. I could take a train there. I get on the train. I'm 21 years old. I've got a backpack on. I sit down. I start to go across. I'm getting ready to go to Soviet territory. Completely legal, because I'm not getting off the train. A guy sits down next to me, young guy about my age, and he goes, get off the train. What are you doing? You're going to break your security contract? They were following me when I was backpacking in Europe. Make no mistake, they can find you anywhere that they can tag anyone. They target you. They have infinite capacities. I'm going to tell you about a thing we call it the Ministry of Truth, but what it was really called was the Global Engagement Center that Obama set up, which is the place that is the node that they talk about, the point focal node. That is one place. It's here in America. It's called the Board of Broadcasting Governors.
Yes.
You are on the air. They watch you. They listen to you.
Board of Broadcasting
If you
Governors.
say anything wrong, they will come after you.
And by the way, the BBG, talk about this. BBG. Now listen to me. I've got LGBTQIK, the BBG, the FSB, the RAGGMOPP, RAGMOP. I am an abbreviation, not an acronym, an abbreviation. Who is in charge of NBC News? Andy Lack. Who was in charge of the BBG? Andy Lack. Come on. This is, yes. Andy Lack, by the way, when he was on the BBG.
How do you even know of the BBG? We're the only people I've ever written or spoken about it that I know of.
Broadcast Governors. Are you kidding? They were the ones who said, this is the guy who said with a straight face, he compared RT to ISIS.
Yes. These people are nuts.
RT. And he says, who the hell are you? We're BBG. He's like, you're Voice of America. You're Radio Free Europe. So
that's what it was before Obama.
Right.
The National Defense Authorization Act, from the second year he was in, he wrote new language in every single year that it was renewed. And he always used the excuse, if you don't pass this now at the last hour before Christmas, our troops won't eat. They won't get their Christmas dinner. And it always passed. No one ever questioned anything he put in there. The BBG became control of America. We became war actors because of cyber warfare. We're right now in cyber world. We can be war actors, and they are targeting us. We are now all subject to have been changed to the American Freedom Act from the U.S. Patriot Act, which says that you are basically a terrorist until proven otherwise. You have no civil rights, and the U.S. Constitution has been suspended since the U.S. Patriot Act was put into act, according to some people. I would have to say, don't forget who put it into place. Robert Mueller, who was getting his appendix out when the towers fell, and then came in and didn't notice Tower 7 fell and nothing hit it. And never in history has any metal building ever fallen from the slight fires that were in it. He covered up completely.
Right. Well,
he was there to begin with in 1993. He put the back doors and everything. Now, I can tell you how that works through Eric Schmidt if you want to see the exact mechanism. And if you know this,
let me ask you this.
You are amazing.
And please, isn't it not true that when Bill Gates, another one, the boy genius, please, if somebody came along and said, I always do this thought experiment where I can exhume somehow, bring back Eric Blair, George Orwell. And I said, so Eric, he says, how is it today, old boy? How's a dystopia? Even better. You know the stories where you had to break in? Remember when you had to break in and you had the light bulb and you're always in front of checking in with the mirror? We've got this now.
That's right.
We've got people who stand in lines overnight to get their surveillance, and they're going to eventually. They have it on them, and not only that. You ready for this? It emits radiation and gives them a cauliflower-sized, glioblastoma, and it's mind-boggling. But you said something before, isn't it?
I'm so addicted. Mine is on, and I haven't even turned it off to talk with you. And if you took it from me, I would freak out. Right. And I try to be away from this as often as possible. You can't implant something in someone they won't take out, but you can get this implanted in them.
Right. And through transhumanism, this subsequent approximation, because the day that people start having this little chip put in you, because it's going to start like this. Hey, listen. You know how every now and then you'll find a dog? They'll find this dog, little pooch, little OnStar for your dog, and they'll say, hey, look at this. There's the one. Hey, it's Thomas Paine's dog. Isn't that wonderful? Say, you've got grandma and grandpa, and they're walking around there. They have Alzheimer's. Let's put it in them. And then your kids. No more Amber Alerts. I mean, it's happening. But isn't it not true that the reason why Apple, for example, is not so susceptible to viruses is that they didn't have this back door. The reason why Microsoft and PCs were getting all these viruses was because basically there's no lock to it. The door is open, so everything came in there. Whereas Apple, for whatever reason, Steve Jobs, maybe nobody cared. Like Apple, we don't care about that. That's not going to take off. Isn't it true that that's why Apple is not as susceptible to viruses, because of that backdoor vulnerability?
Yes. Up until the point that they bought in completely to having to align with social media. So the second your Apple hits Google, you're susceptible. Now, to begin with, this was the problem, you see. The people that I work with created AT&T's own mail service, okay? That's where it all started. He invented the thing that made social networking bigger than just having 200 people in your group work. So you could have Linux, you could have Microsoft, you could have all these group works. I was in all of them in those days, couldn't get through them, couldn't get into anything big. When he invented this, they literally knew this was coming because they were watching him and his group all along, and they saw it was coming, so they set up a group, and who did they put in it? Hewlett-Packard, which is completely government, AT&T, completely government, IBM, completely government, and then the startup companies that had thought that they could do this because they thought when they first stole it from Leader Technology, it was ready to go, and it wasn't. There was a mistake in it. So they had to wait for, I think, almost 2 years. And so you have dude Zuckerberg. He's been sued, 4 or 5 times. He always loses. He always settles. He never goes to court because he'd lose, because he can't even, I don't know if he can spell the word source code or anything. I really don't think he can do anything. If you look at his record, we have gone into this so detailed. We have targeted him, and notice now he's going down. We know how they did the election, and we know how Eric Schmidt worked with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama through the U.S. Digital Service. We know, we have pictures of them doing it. We have them bragging about it. We have the system. We have the money. We followed the whole thing, and then it disappeared. Where did it go? The node is now not at the Global Engagement Center, which is at the heart of the Department of Defense's broadcasting governors, which governs everything broadcast. That means everything, anywhere. Anything broadcast, including ham radios, is controlled by the government. Make no mistake about it. All controlled through this node. That node was while the Global Engagement Center, but the head of it and the 3 top guys left because they knew that what they were doing was exactly what Apple was getting, Facebook was getting busted for, which is putting up these Russian memes. They put up the Russian memes. That wasn't Russians. That wasn't 470 accounts of Russians. That is a lie. We know that the people who did it came out and said it out loud in public when they quit, because they said, we're using Tor, and we're using open source works, and we're using these CI target tools. We just say, I want every right-wing anti-Trumper, deplorable, who is on the fence, who has a Facebook. They literally can put in any definers they want, and they can target that person. And then when they target you, it isn't even for the group. It individually goes in, because you have Eric Schmidt, when he got out and made Alphabet, he's planning to be the head of the world, and he's going to live forever. Just listen to what he has to say.
Oh,
and
yes,
he now
yes.
He now has the robot atlas, and he's building them like crazy. He's creating his own army of robot warriors that are unstoppable. This is not an exaggeration. It was a DARPA project.
Right there. Stop right now. See, I'm getting excited. This is just like, this is like being on some cocaine binge. We're not doing any cocaine.
I don't do cocaine.
I don't either. But what I'm saying
I don't drink. I don't even drink coffee. I don't smoke.
Well, that's your problem. You should be drinking.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm this way.
to dampen this freaking mind of yours. But the idea is that it started, and again, going back to this hypothetical conversation I would have with Blair, with Orwell, I'm going to say, the tech companies came along, and to average to the CNN, MSDNC people, they go, well, these are just people who came along. Mark Zuckerberg's in his Harvard dormitory, says, hey, I've got an idea of how we can do this kind of cool thing. And next thing you know, and it's simple enough, and the group, stop it. But Boston Dynamics, the notion of robots.
Yes.
One of the things, they saw that, and these robots, and it's not robots, it's AI. Forget the robot. The robot is something that vacuums your home. We're not talking about it. We're talking about that. And what's the first thing, Mr. Payne, that an AI wants to do? It wants to replicate. And
Correct.
It wants to get away.
How do you know that?
Well,
you're the only person I know that actually knows that.
But it wants to replicate, and it wants to turn you off.
Oh,
and
totally.
It senses, and it learns. So another thing is from sex robots, which, by the by, seems to be this quirky thing, these sex robots. Oh, no. Because remember, in all of the rooms of the bad guys, we have the eugenicists over here in the New World Order. If somebody says, I have a great new way for depopulation, another vaccine? No. More chemtrail spray? No. What? Robots. We will kill their humanity. We will kill. And by the by, as an aside, the other day they said they have their first trans robot. Now, excuse me. Here's a terrible joke. Please don't take me. A trans robot. You mean a robot that has the wrong genitalia? So if somebody says, oh, shit, I made a mistake. What? I put the wrong genitalia. No, wait. That's a trans. What? Put it in the transit. No, it's wrong. Even better. Put it in the trans. Don't throw that away. We'll call it something else. So, but going back to this again, when we talked about the GCHQ, which is the British version of NSA, in Fort Meade, Maryland, they're sitting next to, and there is, the internet is not in Coventry, England or Maryland. It's, they're sitting next to us. So someone can say, hello, Jeeves. Yes, would you do me a favor? Would you look up, Thomas Paine. He's a Brit we want. America says, I'll look it up for you. Nobody cares about us. That FISA, remember, foreign intelligence, foreign. And then NSA says, listen, do me a favor. I want you to follow this guy, Payne. He's an American citizen, and technically I can't follow him. Could you do me a favor? Could you know that Russian, Natalia, whatever it was, the Russian who met with Trump? Yeah, follow her because she's talking to him. Got it. And it's a fiction. Sure. It's this plausible deniability fiction where people are sitting next to each other, sharing information, and it's not about wiretaps. It's not about, this is a cabal, a criminal conspiracy, true, the likes of which people can't even get their arms around. And for whatever it's worth, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win.
Oh, yes.
This was not, Trump came along and screwed everything up.
Oh, he is the disruptive wrecking ball that is knocking it all down, and all he has to do is stand there. He has some amazing astrological aspects. I know I'm going out in the weeds, but he had the eclipse right on his ascendant. You can't get a better aspect. I have looked for a bad aspect in his chart since he announced his candidacy. And by the way, we have in the conclave the astrologer who was Reagan's astrologer. He had his wife had astrologers, but my dear friend was his astrologer, and I often got in on that because I did other things and gave my opinion. So we've been doing this, the conclave. You ask how come I ain't dead? That's because we're decentralized, and they're never going to get to my house. And even if they did, some of their equipment wouldn't work, and it doesn't matter because everything I say is open source, and I make sure I say that. Nothing I say, just what you just said, that the Brits are sitting in Fort Meade, Maryland. That's a fact. Did you know that when you said that?
Yes.
They are the ones. They were spying on Trump in the Trump Towers.
Yes.
That's what Admiral Rogers went there to tell him, get out, and he got out and went to Bedminster. Why? Because Manafort's phone had been tapped for over 4 years. Andrew Snyderman, the Attorney General of New York State, and Andrew Weissman and Pret Bharara have been trying to get Manafort because he's one of the most powerful men on the earth. He got Yanukovych reelected in a country where there had been the Orange Revolution to take him out. He got reelected because of Manafort. That's why Trump used him. Stone, Manafort, Kelly, and Black used to be the most powerful oppositional and propaganda machine and lobbyist in the world.
And that's
now,
Roger Stone, and Roger Stone's may not to be some buffoon, but he's not. But by the way, Yanukovych, this was a democratically run Ukraine, and instead they pour in, as my friend calls him, Poroshenko, which was basically a U.S. NATO shill. Before we get to this, I know we're jumping ahead. Who was the idiot who let the internet out? Because were it not for us, this changed everything. Two things. By the way, I'm a big believer in astrology. I happen to be born under the sign of Feces. Most people don't know that, but I digress. Now, you've got Trump. You've got Trump who comes along and he does this, and Hillary basically loses. But then you have this. In 1960, if you were this person with this incredible knowledge about what's going on, what would you have done? Nothing. Written a letter? Gone to the New York Times? Nothing. How did the internet get out? How did this little bug get out and start multiplying?
I'm so glad you asked. That's one thing we've revealed that no one else has yet to even look at. The internet wasn't possible. It wasn't an accident. It was a fight between the CIA, which has their rogue headquarters at CERN in Switzerland. It's fake. There's only one cyclotron there. The other two are fake. $5 trillion for fake machines, okay? They put them down in holes and they did collectors and things, but they didn't actually make the cyclotron. Anyway, when the NSA was spying on the rogue CIA, they found out that they were connected to the UN's Bank for International Settlement and also
Basel.
all the criminal activities.
That's the central bank of central banks.
Yes.
Basel, Switzerland, right.
They found out that the rogue CIA was using Swiss banks. That's the reason that later the federal government went in and stopped those Swiss numbered accounts, and now there's only Swiss gold bullion accounts in Zurich at the Zurich airport, the only place you can really hide money. That's where all the gold is. The biggest amount of gold in the world is there. That's well known. But the point is that when the CIA started fighting with the NSA because the NSA let this out, that's when the big leaks started to happen. Some of the leaks that we think were leaks, those weren't leaks. Those were the other agency warring against them. So there's been a war. The CIA and the NSA, the good CIA and the NSA knew what the bad CIA was doing and that they were fronting in CERN. So what did they do? They took Sir Timothy Berners-Lee, and he miraculously, while working on atomic particles, discovered how to do IP addresses on the internet so all of us could create our own websites so that we could create what is the revolution. You're asking, how did that revolution happen? That was to weaponize the internet, to take attention away from the rogue CIA so that we wouldn't catch them. It has reversed, and it has now become an uncontrollable, weaponized aspect that has gone into commerce so much. Let's remember, the most important thing is not war, it's economic war. And that is all controlled by counterintelligence. And remember, the entire DOJ and FBI said this, the first person to say this, and I said it even before Robert Mueller was ever appointed. I said he would be appointed. We said he would be appointed because we heard Comey 3 times perjure himself, and we knew he was going to plea down. And now we hear today Thomas Paine from True Pundit saying that the immunity deal with Mueller and Comey has been struck. No one knows there's been an immunity deal, but there had to be because he met with Mueller before he testified before Congress. So therefore, that is either collusion, and he didn't recuse himself. So I'm sorry, that's the worst form of obstruction of justice I've ever seen, blatantly in our face, directly out of D.C. So.
Okay, let me stop for a second. This is so great. Now, because right now somebody, I imagine, let's stop for a second. There's somebody who's watching this, maybe had to go to a doctor's office, maybe pick their kids up, and they're right now frozen like this. And they look like when a Skype picture freezes, that's what they look like. Because, oh my God. Now, let me stop for 1 second and go back. Richard C. Walker.
Oh, yes.
Right? Now, this is another, playing the part of the evil genius was Richard C. Walker. He is Big Brother. He and others are working on right now. The ultimate goal is this idea where all of us are basically, what's the word? Transistors?
Wetware.
We're
Wetware.
wetware. Not hardware, not software, wetware. Well, the idea of MK Ultra, and believe it or not, one of the Naked Gun episodes with Ricardo Montalban. I know this. You're going to say, what is he talking about?
Oh, I love these illusions.
Remember when Ricardo Montalban says, Mr. Popschmier, he says, the most dangerous type of weapon is a person who doesn't know they're a weapon. Watch this. And he brings in this woman who happens to be the mother of the producer, and he clicks something, and all of a sudden she pulls a gun on and starts shooting. From the Manchurian Candidate to whatever, it has been, just like controlling weather, there has been an inherent evil dream that all humans in every iteration and every version of humanity throughout time has been wanted through mind control, Svengali, look into my eyes, Dracula, Rasputin, you name it. Drug control, mind control, MK Ultra, LSD experiments, to be able, the berserkers who would drink these things and the warriors, the idea of being able to control, to weaponize humanity, to flip a switch. People who were already there, all of a sudden, Pope Francis pulls out an M4 and wipes out the Vatican. I mean, you laugh.
No, I could believe that, actually, if that was the news tomorrow.
But that's what we're ultimately talking. Planes being able to drop. 9/11. Want to have another one of those? Want to have? And not to mention there were 46 drills that day on 9/11, which is interesting. Hijacking drills. Imagine that, Mr. Payne. Hijacking drills on a day where planes were hijacked, and you have to say, no, I mean it. I'm serious. So that notwithstanding. So go back to Mr. Walker. Worst case scenario. What will he bring to the devil's party, so to speak? Take us down a terrible dystopian nightmare of what will happen because of this type of activity.
Well, it's even worse than you might imagine. So if you told the story like...
Thanks!
No, it is. It's worse than the standard sci-fi story. It really is. Because people are doing it willingly, as you've already pointed out. We aren't even having to ask Westerners to do this. They're willingly put the chip in, do whatever. But here's what they really want to do. Exactly what you said. And even further, by what works, this is what they define. Putting a chip inside of your neural network so that they can control you. But the ultimate feat is that it goes throughout all the body to your muscles so that they can make your muscles do what they tell you to do. And they want you to be just like a computer, off switch, or 0 day, you're done, you're dead, or remote control. But this is called aggressive remote control. This is the big thumb of the Big Brother, and it is already in some cities being tested so that people have the implants, they don't use credit cards anymore, they got the driverless cars, they already are doing these things. Now, we got to explain, the dystopia is very simple. This is military. Always has been military. Now, I want to go back. That center that I described as the Ministry of Truth, they aren't doing it anymore. It is in Obama's first house. The U.S. Digital Service that combined all of these things, the very that you're talking about, the Internet of Things would be a general way to describe it, but that's not the way they describe it because that's created by Cisco Company, which, by the way, Cisco is military, always has been. Cisco was NSA's golden child, and when the Internet was developed, it was only because Cisco created the routers. And as they said in 2000, every single communication across the Internet goes through a Cisco router. That router used to be right next to the Pentagon. They moved it, and they put it into 3 different places in the country. So Cisco Remember the war between when Cisco was revealed to be NSA's golden child and they were putting these backdoors into their servers, sending them to foreign countries, acting like they didn't do it to every American? Well, that was a lie. Of course, they didn't do that. Those were already built in, and they now don't even need a backdoor per se as a hardware. It's built into the microchip, and then they just use the source code. So they get through the encryption simply by writing a source code. And everyone must agree to that source code. And we're going to go back to Eric Schmidt because he is evil. And we're going to describe Schmidt. We want Schmidt out even more than Dude Zuckerberg. Dude Zuckerberg doesn't matter. But, Peter Thiel and the Instagram and Snapchat and Palantir and, oh my gosh, all of Hewlett-Packard and all of AT&T and all of IBM and Microsoft and Apple were all part of the IBM Eclipse group. When they got leader technology stuff, they were able to do the Internet of Things. They weren't able to do it before because they couldn't control so many devices without a central control. So the reason that our conclave is protected, decentralization.
What is your conclave? Define your conclave. What does that mean?
That's a group of a bunch of my friends, ex-military and otherwise, who they feed me and I'm their spokesperson.
Is there a good force? Tell me there are people. Tell me there are good people in the NSA, good people in CIA, good people in FBI, good people, great patriots, great truth warriors, people who don't like what's going on. Tell me there's going to be a coup, a revolution. Tell me one day the good guys will win. Tell me that one day the good guys are actually putting in deliberate problems and bugs in these systems to stop weaponized robotics. Tell me, Mr. Payne, please, that there's something good that I can look forward to. That good will triumph over evil. Tell me.
Guys like you, there's not many, and there's a homeopathic effect. You only need a small group that affect the whole group, and then consciousness changes. That's why a meme works. That's why a narrative works. That's why the neural network has actually been able to be captured by MRI and be able to project it to people. So the evil is running now because of a small group of very greedy people. They could all be overthrown very easily. Donald Trump knew George Washington crossing the Delaware without a single battle, having victory after victory. Remember, George Washington had 2 battles that he won. He retreated all the others. One was the Delaware, and Yorktown was the other, and that's because the French Armada came to save him. So Trump is a contender. One at a time. You stand up, you fight him, you're going to lose. It's called the Trump effect. He has no bad aspects. You attack him, the same attack comes at you. Look at everyone from Al Green, second impeachment. After the first impeachment, $750,000 out of his first account showed that he was a sexual predator, and he still has the nerve the second time to come with an impeachment motion just the other day. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing the desperation. And now the great news is the second revolution, which was supposed to be a color revolution of George Soros. His 14th successful color revolution was supposed to be Donald Trump. 7 steps. We're on step 7. Step 6 is to say the election was a fraud and overturn an election. That's what he does for most of his color revolutions. That's what he did in Ukraine. That's what he did in Yugoslavia.
Right. Yep.
All over, right? Wherever you go, follow George Soros. He was used by the CIA to do that to the USSR to begin with. That's how he got started. We created that evil monster. George Herbert Walker Bush created Soros. But anyway, what is happening here is the Second American Revolution, and Donald Trump is just on them every day. We made a list of what, if he did these 12 things, he would end the overthrow of the Republic, which started in 1871.
Tell me now, where are they and what are they? Just off, because one of the things we talked about very briefly, very, very briefly, was that he needs to take control of intellectual property, patents, copyrights. Intellectual property is the way that not only I can look. All governments want to do 2 things. Number 1, limit speech, limit any kind of any type of resistance, and also to weaponize them. They want to make sure you cannot fight back. And we're not talking just about assault weapons. We're talking about this. We're talking about speech. We're talking about respect. We're talking about a voice. Anything you can use to harm me, I want to basically denude you of that. That's what he wants to do. But patents, intellectual property, copyrights, that's how they shut down websites. That's how they shut people down. It seems like it's rather benign and rather arcane and recondite form of law, but it's going to be it's going to be used as a spearhead, as a juggernaut to stop speech. But what are the points, and where can we look for those points? What does Trump need to do to bring the apple cart back to its upright position?
Well, I won't list our 12. I'll list the ones he's already acted on. We told him to get out of the United Nations. It's complete corruption. So he got
Thank
out.
you. Thank you.
$24 billion. That's only the tip of the iceberg. We were spending, I forget how many billions of dollars for those 100,000 refugees who came in that we never saw. And the government never vetted, not one iota. And we have entire citizens intelligence reports on that. He got out of, he's going to get out of all those agencies in the United Nations. That's the reason that in Kazakhstan, they've already set up Asanta, the new city for the United Nations. It's already built. They already know. They predicted Trump, by the way. He destroyed the intelligence communities because the intelligence community wrote, and that's what Hillary was referring to, and that's why Bernie ran as a socialist, and that's why Trump ran, because they wrote their 5-year predictive program, the intelligence community. And they printed it after Trump became president, but it was already out before that. And it's called The Paradox of Progress. And they said in there, if someone came out who was a nationalist, who went against terrorism and actually called it terrorism, they would win unless the Democratic Party went totally socialist. These are their words. That's exactly what happened. So he knew this. He was already approached by the intelligence communities to run. And that's the reason Flynn was in. Flynn said, get rid of all of the corporate intelligence, go with only military, because if they break the law, it's treason, they die. They go to jail. There doesn't even have, it's a court-martial. It isn't a case, as you know. But corporate is 65% of all intelligence. So you got rid of the intelligence. Whether people know it or not, what he did, we predicted with the DACA. DACA is a Congress issue. He didn't need to get involved. Why did he get involved? So that he would look very good and so that he would distract from the fact that he's already building the wall. He already used state funds and other funds, and he's building the wall as we speak. DACA, he has nothing to do with DACA. DACA was a Homeland Security memorandum from the president, which was illegal to defer deportation.
What do you
was
think
just
about
like
the wall?
DAPA.
What do you think about the wall?
Well, you need the wall in certain sections, and you need it in the sections where we have the CIA bringing the drugs. But remember, Trump just burnt most of the opium-making factories and the opium fields in Afghanistan. That is what was driving the rogue CIA. They were bringing it across the southern border. That's why all those deaths. Why do you think all those people are getting killed on the border? And who was the number one immigrant during Obama's time? Pregnant Asian women to come in for anchor children. Now, let me tell you the facts. You want to know why Schumer did what he did? Because the 800,000 DACA had come out. That was a lie. It's 3.6. And I've been saying this all along. Just look. These are literally documented illegal aliens. Okay, I want you to consider that oxymoron. A documented illegal alien, 3.6 million of them, not 800,000. So that would have what? Quadrupled the price and the budget, so it was a lie, it was fraud.
Why do they want illegal immigrants, aliens, whatever? What is the purpose? What is their goal?
There's 11.5 illegal, documented illegal aliens voting Democrat. Are you kidding? When he set Pence and they got 17 states to put input from the states, what did they find? Between 3.5 to 4.5 illegal votes. That was with only 17 states. And then what happened?
But isn't there a better way for them just to fudge around with Diebold or something, just change the numbers rather than bring these people in? I think there's also something also.
That's true too.
The idea
you're right, they do that.
That there is this part, and again going back to this wonderful hoary trope of the New World Order, the idea of a unipolar world, an idea where jurisdictions, currency, sovereignty, come on in. Why do you think George W. Bush, why W, never had a problem? Never went after immigrants or illegals. Had no problem with the Trans-Texas Corridor. No problem with the NAFTA superhighway. When the North American Union, which was on its way, and the Amero, George W. Bush, Prescott Bush's grandson, as old school and old order as you can imagine, it's a rogue governments thrive on, it's the old Hegelian dialectic thing, they thrive on destabilization. Destroy your orders, bring people, cause chaos. You want chaos? You need more wars. You need more laws. You need more police. You need more of us. Let them run rampant. Take your jobs. Bring them in. And then explain this, Thomas Paine. How is it that you would think, I remember the old days we thought, the right-wingers, these are the Nazi. These guys are crazy. These are your crazy bastard, crazy right-wing Nazi. No, The left, the faux, fictive, synthetic left, the progressives and the liberals, these are the ones who, they're dreamers. We call them dreamers. Come on in. We're going to rally. We're going to wear pussy hats. And we're going to say, they've become this logolalic, ambulatory, schizophrenic, kind of like the weird attack dog of, for lack of a better word, the New World Order. They love the UN. They've also loved war. They won war in Syria. They've got a sovereign. Assad's the best thing that ever happened. He and Putin are knocking the hell out of ISIS. And these people who used to be the, where have all the flowers gone? Now, these are the hardcore Curtis LeMay badasses. I mean, do you see what's happening? Of course you do, but I mean, it's amazing. And I know people who are like, I asked them, I said, where do you think, look, we all feel sorry for kids, but where are these people going? Where are they? Where is the infrastructure? I don't know. But my grandfather came here, and he had 50 cents to rub together. Mm-hmm. And he said, would you cut that out? What are you, I mean, so Trump comes across as the, and what does the BBG put out? He will apparently, according to Stormy Daniels, like to be spanked with a rolled up Forbes with his picture on it. That's CNN. That's MSDNC, to act as the rodeo clown to distract people from the news that we're talking about. Talk about this stuff. Trump's an idiot. Trump's a fool. Trump has small hands and orange skin and a bad hairdo. And
he said shithole.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the world should explode. He didn't even say that. And they all said hellhole.
Right.
They all said the word hellhole. He was accused of a false word, and that goes worldwide. They now want a full apology from 54 nations in Africa because he said Africa was a shithole. They should probably look at the fact that we turned it into a shithole. We turned Haiti into a shithole. The very shitholes he's talking about were bombed or raped, either bombed by Obama and Clinton or raped by Susan Rice.
One of the, and I can see right now the OED, yes, let's vote on the words of 2018, all in favor of shithole. Yes, there we go. I knew it always was here, but now it has its own hashtag. Do you remember when that one happened? I said, hey, did you hear what happened? Yeah. Trump, what did he say? You're not going to believe this. He called Haiti a shithole. And? And? No, he called him a shithole. And? That was a reaction. It is. But going
Haiti's
back,
a shithole because the Clintons ripped off billions of dollars, and that's why it is in that condition. It's
Let me say
so
something.
sad that it's so opposite, like you and I. It's opposite of the way it was when we were young. You have to have discernment to understand this stuff.
Stop for a second. Do you remember, and again, I hearken back to this, and my poor beloved wife has heard this so many times. When I was a kid, you remember this, Eric Brin was a guy who was, I believe, he used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he had a stick with these plates. And he would play Flight of the Bumblebees, and he had like 5 plates, and they were all spinning. Oh, yeah. You've got to be able to do that today. I've got this plate, I got that plate, I got so many plates right now. I mean, most people who say, hey, what are you talking about? I say, I don't think you can handle this. Because for this country that supposedly has no attention span, which, by the way, is complete nonsense because they can watch an entire season of Orange is the New Black over a weekend, no problem with that. But we are facing things right now that are so complex, it's like a Gordian knot. It's like a tangled ball of fishing line, and it's like we can't throw it away. We got to untangle this. And you've got Hillary Clinton. You've got Mena, Arkansas. You've got this. My good friend Charles Ortel, who has done more to bring up the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, $100 billion unprosecuted, not a Ponzi scheme, a scheme. $10 billion that went south. Haiti never saw it. Watered down AIDS. Hillary Clinton, who, and it's amazing, when we said, now let's look at his health. They say he's 6'3", his BMI is this, I think, and they're going through, he's taking Lipitor, how many milligrams a day? Well, he's sick. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's walking around with Fresnel lenses from diplopia and a blood clot that her husband wrote about, Zeiss 1B blue photosynthetic epilepsy Don Was glasses. after she fell on 9/11. She's making head jerks like this, has a seizure. She's seizing during the night she accepted the nomination. She had this large African-American gentleman with a benzo pen standing by when she froze. And we're worried about Trump's BMIs going back and forth, and he's flying and he's active. I mean, the number one problem we have in this country is this bought and sold Ted Baxter sock puppet, cookie cutter, echo chamber playbook, mainstream media, this apparatchik fake news firewall, this like an occlusion, this Bezor. Remember how they always said John Wayne had 50 pounds of undigested... Well, that's the mainstream media. It's an undigested Bezor, and it needs to be flushed. Because this news, if the average American knew 1% of what we're talking about, they'd be marching in the streets and not wearing a pussy hat.
Right. So DAPA has 4.4 million. DAPA is on instantaneous as soon as you accept DACA, because it's their parents. And then chain migration brings in the rest of the 11.5 that are the documented. Why are they documented? Because Obama documented them so that he could break the law and allow them in. Congress refused to do it twice.
Help me with this. Forget DARPA, forget DACA. Now we got DAPA. Yabba dabba doo to you, sir. Fred Flint's on it. DACA versus DAPA. What's the difference? Explain, sir.
DACA are the children, and DAPA is the adults. The criminals who brought them in. They get in too, automatically. Because of chain migration. That's the reason they won't drop chain migration.
Explain chain migration.
Why?
Chain migration is...
If you come in from any country, even if it's a lottery, you get in, you can bring your brothers. That's how we brought in some of the Chechnyan criminals. That's how we brought in some of the... We have... Just last year, there were like 700 people arrested for terrorism. Did you know that? They never told us about a single one of them, did they? And guess what percentage of them came from the countries that Trump wanted to stop migration, stop any migration from? 87% of them. So Trump is right in what he's doing. We talked earlier, but now let's just clearly hit this. Why did this happen? Obama did to America what he did to Europe. He bombed 7 countries, killed 2 million people, put 56 million people into refugee status so they would attack and invade Europe. He did the same here by bringing in 100,000 of our enemies and just basically dropping the borders, allowing everyone to come in and violate everything they want. Everybody violated everything. Anyone who got in this country stayed. Nobody got kicked out. And who are they? They're the criminals. They've already filled all of our jails. So we mentioned before, what are the winning? The winning is he's told Europe they're crazy. They've been invaded. He told NATO, pay your bill. And then he sold them a bunch of weapons.
Yes.
He told China, screw you. I'm not afraid of you. I don't sit on Walmart like Hillary, Walmart's board, and get paid for it. I'm not like Bill Clinton. I didn't sell us out with the World Trade Organization through the UN. I didn't turn Taiwan, let you take over Taiwan, let you take over Tibet, let you take over. So what has done? He's basically pointed out that North Korea is nothing more than an extension of China, and he called China out. They sent them, oil during the embargo, during the sanctions. He called them out. He's called them out. He stopped the $5 trillion climate accord, which was complete fake. Now, every other day, you see the evidence showing every statistic was fake. Let's remember, we don't even own the agencies. Those are not government agencies that they're quoting. Many, many weather agencies are owned by, I don't even want to tell you who, because it sounds too much like a conspiracy, but I can tell you.
Tell me.
It's the Rothschild family. They bought into every single radar system and every single weather thing they could, and they have constructed these things to create a new currency called carbon footprints.
Thank you.
That's what it was about. It was a new currency. Now, what has Trump done? Trump stopped the stock market from crashing. Why do you think the stock market hasn't crashed? Every single crash was created by the U.S. Treasury. That's a fact. The Exchange Stabilization Fund has infinite money. They control the Fed. The Fed doesn't control economic policy. That's a lie. The Exchange Stabilization Fund has infinite money. And one day they printed $4.5 trillion. They were asked and gave it to the Fed. The Fed were asked 2 weeks later where it went. They said they didn't know. It was off-book transactions. So we have right there another $4.5 trillion in debt that that's off, that they're not even telling us we owe. We don't owe a single penny to them. You simply default on them. You
one
simply
of these
default.
days, we're going to have to do this because I want to because you've been so kind. We've been doing this for an hour, and right now there are people jumping off of ledges. People
I hope not.
But one of the things that is important is I always think to myself about this movie. And whenever I want to explain to somebody, explain this, Carbon. I said, let me explain this. Let's say there's a movie, and I'm playing the bad guy, and I say, sit down, son, Neo, whatever. Here's your red pill moment. What we want is control. What we're doing right now is we're controlling something through their children. We're showing them pictures of a polar bear. A polar bear huddling maybe with its mom on an ice cube that used to be an iceberg. And we are conditioning people to feel so guilty. Forget things like the Holocene maxima and hypsithermals and the history of vicissitudes and whatever it is. And we're going to show these people that somehow they're involved with this. And they will be at some point, using again that Hegelian dialectic part, please, we'll do anything. Okay. How would you like to pay your carbon footprint? I'll do anything to have a little baby. Okay. We're now going to exchange this. And listen, Payne, you've got 30 credits you've used. What does that mean? Well, you're only allowed 20. Now, over here, this guy's got 10. He'll send you, and we've now opened up not only a new exchange, Al Gore and Marie Strong, the first carbon billionaires, but a new sense of control, taxing. I can control. And as long as I get Tom Hanks, and people and the left, and the fact that they're bringing down Mr. Payne, the fact that they're bringing down Hollywood, and we haven't got to child sex trafficking yet. We haven't even, because
that's on my list. I was going to list all the things Trump has done are amazing.
Go ahead, give me some more.
Okay, he stopped the plunge protection team. That has caused the stock market to go up continuously.
What is that?
The plunge protection team creates every single downturn in the stock market. This is a historical fact.
Spell that, the what punch? But what?
The plunge.
Oh, plunge. Oh, sorry, plunge.
Protection team. They're part of the Exchange Stabilization Fund. They work out of the New York Fed in New York. So when you look at the mechanisms, they're not complicated. We're talking about 36 people. We're talking about taking down 36 people right now. Because of Trump's second revolution and the purple revolution of Soros has been overthrown and Trump is winning in every single category. The only category he wasn't winning in was the Mueller investigation, which I told Mueller to get out before Thanksgiving or you will go down. And I told him, get out before Christmas or you and all your friends are going down. And by golly, they're all going down. That memo is going to take them down. Why did they have to come out and expose themselves? Because Trump has caused all, the Bilderberger, the CFR. Have you heard a word from the Council on Foreign Relations since Trump became president? I don't even know if they've had a meeting. Why? He ignores them. He's getting out of the IMF. So the old control that got China and Russia to try to bid into the International Monetary Fund and get drawing rights, which was a different type of currency and has been the currency internationally for quite some time for the World Bank. That's all gone. Trump said, we don't need you, and we don't need any of your refugees.
By the by, if you the whole SDR thing and the Fed, who was it? I think it was Kucinich, maybe, but somebody said that the Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. It's a private central bank. But speaking of the CFR, you know where Haas was? Their president used to be on Morning Joe. Joe and Zika, the Zika virus, meager. He would be on there all the time. The CFR, they're on Fifth Avenue. Remember they were quiet for it, then they came out. Well, it's just a think tank. Angelina Jolie, bring her in here. These shills. Bono, talking about third world debt. Trilateral Commission, that's still there. Remember when Bilderberg, in 1954 they met. Let me ask you something, Mr. Payne. Imagine if I went to ESPN, whatever's left of them, or Entertainment Tonight or The Hollywood Reporter and said, did you know that all of the NFL presidents meet secretly since 1954? They'd be over to go, what are you doing? What are you meaning? Who's there? Why do we? Or if I said, hey, listen, Hollywood Reporter, do you know that all the agents or the studio heads meet secretly around the world with their own security? They'd be there in a heartbeat. But if I said the leaders of the world, in violation of the Logan Act in many respects here, with their own security meet and basically cobble out and put together basically scripts for the future. The euro was crickets. No interest. Well, it's Davos. You know how the people are. They get together and what do you want? If it was any other situation, they'd be all over it. How do we get... We have to shock the conscience and the conscious of the people. Because a friend of mine said, there's more of us than them. We can drown them in our urine. It's a disgusting thought, but there's a lot of us. We've got to mobilize these people. And by the way, we're going to do this again because I don't want to just take more of your time. We have to do this again. But how do we get this across? What do we do? How do we join forces? What can my clerisy members and your conclaves, what can we do as a unit?
Well, I believe that, first off, consciousness is the key. And that's what you're doing. You're raising people's consciousness. And I just love the way you can characterize something that I consider so serious, and then it just puts it into light. When you bring things to the light, I mean, that's what's going to happen. He needs to conquer the 3 dozen people I was talking about. He needs to keep doing what he said he was going to do, which he's going down the list. And I swear I don't know anything on the list he's not working on. He's writing executive orders.
Where is the list? Show us where the list is. Where is the list?
The list is on aimfortruth.org. And you go over to the left-hand side and you can do a search. And all you just put in, say, whatever you're querying about. And we have probably 25 articles there or something like that. And you'll get all the details. So we made a list. I'll just list it. Stop the U.S. Federal Reserve. Default on it. Realize that exchange stabilization funds should no longer have a plunge protection team. No more up and down. Stop gambling on the $1.4 quadrillion on the New York Stock Exchange. Charge them 0.001 cent for their exchanges. No longer let it be a hedge fund.
This is the
a tax haven.
This is the Wall Street sales tax. This is the token tax. This is the Robin Hood tax or whatever. This is other people have talked about this. An exchange rate, especially with these fast tradings. That's right there.
High frequency trading. There is no more free market. There never was a free market. Anyone who believes that is silly. Before war is economic war. Trump, look at what he's done to the economic war. They can't crash the markets now because why? They're all making too much money. The only one not making any money is the central banks because they can't sell anything. So they're holding all these bonds. They're holding all the stock, New York Stock Exchange, right? But anyway, he can go in and take MERS. The mortgages need to be taken out of a central function and go back to the counties. That would give $5 billion back to the counties. He's doing this. I can't count all the money that he has made. We know of $15 trillion he's already made in 1 year for the United States government. When that happens, everything else changes. He's getting rid of the corporate intelligence. He's busting everybody. He went over to Saudi Arabia and said, I'm not doing any more business with you if you are going to promote terrorism of any sort. But if you can get rid of it, you can come trade on the New York Stock Exchange your oil.
What about the revolt?
That's never happened.
What about the revolution going on now with Alawid or whatever? What's going on with Saudi Arabia? Who's behind that, and is it a good thing?
Well, Trump went over there and said, don't play games with me anymore. I can actually say Islamic terrorism, and you need to stop it. I know you're funding it. I know Qatar is funding it. I know exactly who you're funding. I know why, because people explained it to them. Then what happened? He put his hand on the globe, and the entire Arab world exploded, didn't they? They all went to war with one another. Now, I can explain why some of those wars, like between Iran and Qatar, that's because of the liquid oil in between them, and they're fighting over that. Nobody wants to talk about that. That's the big, big issue. The oil off of the coast of Lebanon, that's what they're fighting about. That's the reason Israel has come to Saudi Arabia's help. And basically, remember, Saudi Arabia and Wahhabism was created by the West, and as the response to the West, we need to stop Salafism. We need to stop Hezbollah. We need to stop Hamas. Obama gave untold amounts of money for Hezbollah to continue. That's the reason the war in Iraq ended. Because why? The Revolutionary Guard came over and took over Iraq. Then they went in and kicked rear over in Syria. What's happening? We paid for that. We need to stop all of that. We need to stop bombing. We need to get out of Syria. We need to get out of Iraq. We need to get out of Afghanistan. We need to stop defending pipelines. We need to stop defending corporations. He's doing all of that.
Let's assume I'm the new president. You are my minister of whatever the hell it is. and I say, all right, Minister Payne, what do we do about Russia? Does Russia pose a threat?
No, never was.
Pardon me?
Never was. They've always been our ally. I worked against them, and I watched us give them the technology so they could keep up, so we could have competition. That's all Russia has ever been. We built an entire city of tech where Raytheon, where DynCorp, where Lockheed Martin, where Boeing, where all the big top companies, tech and everyone went there. We helped Putin get up to speed so that then we could do what? Put sanctions on them against like they're our enemies. They could be our best friends.
Now,
but remember, they're mafia. They're oligarchs. We made them the oligarchs. We took them from communism to capitalism too quick. Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers got their 21, 27% on every single deal there. We still have Leonid Blavatnik, who sits on the largest gas board in Russia, who then became a Brit, who then became an American, who was the second largest donor to the Democrats and to evil Republicans. Why don't we look? Well, what did Trump say? No more lobbyists, campaign finance restructuring, super PACs shouldn't exist. These are all the things that created the Soros revolution. Now, remember from Freddie Mac, from Fannie Mae, from all of the SEC filings that went against HSBC, against UBS, all the money, billions of dollars that that Obama collected went to where? The 184 non-government organizations funded by George Soros, the Tides Foundation, and the Open Society. So what you saw was lawlessness, right? Now you see the rule of law. You can't name a place, whether it be sexual predators in the Congress, whether it be the Imran Awan espionage, whether it be the fake DNC, whether it be the DOJ FBI collusion, whether it be the intelligence wars between the CIA and the NSA. It doesn't matter. They're all exploding. And here's what we pointed out. Trump might have looked at what we did not know, as shocking as the QRS-11, that how many people have died according to Judicial Watch that are confirmed that were directly connected to Clinton? 84.
Oh, yes.
How many were from planes that went down? How many were from cars that went off the road? Because the QRS is in every one of them, and she has the patent, and she had the control, and she's part of the inner group. She's part of IBM Eclipse. She always was. And so all that came out of that. Now, let me explain something very important. The reason that Trump has said the nasty word antitrust, monopoly, looked at Jeff Bezos and said, you know, you could pay the proper postal rate. They would collapse if Jeff Bezos had to pay the proper postal rate tomorrow. If we didn't pay for Facebook, if we didn't pay for Google, they would all collapse. Those are government funded, basically, and they come through a group, which I need to explain now. And this is the most important thing I can say to explain to people how easy this is to stop. There was a man named Andrew Marshall. He used to work for the Department of the Navy, and he's the net assessment expert. When there was going to be a war, you'd have to ask him. He'd do the calculations to determine whether the number dead would actually equal what they wanted. Net assessment, evil. When DARPA started to get out of control because they became internet, which got out of control, which then, when they got a hold of social media, really went out of control. They had to control DARPA, and then it became cyber warfare. Number one thing that makes money, cyber. Number one war, cyber. What affects the economy? Cyber. Everything cyber. The number one theater of war is cyber. So, In-Q-Tel was founded, which is the CIA looked at DARPA, and this is what started the fight between NSA and CIA, and they said, we're going to do what you did. We're going to create this research company, but we're simply going to use people like Larry Brin and Sergey Page. So we took government money. We went to a university. We said, okay, you 12 dudes, figure out through this already open source Memex, called Memex. It was a search program they'd already used. They put the back doors in. They then release it. Then they give it out to a dozen people. The people who do the best, Goldman Sachs comes in, gives them millions of dollars. Unbelievable. I'll tell you about one that was $2 billion. The largest ever was Rick Walker. He is Big Brother. That was the largest amount of money ever created before a company went public. $2.1 billion. Who invested? Judges, insiders, Mueller, Chandler, all the same characters. They have become filthy rich, and they keep the money in offshore accounts. We know that Trump is going after offshore accounts. His executive order was going after offshore accounts. Yes. We told him, we said, this is our list of 12. Stop Glass-Steagall. Stop the Espionage Act. stop the board of review for the patent office, uh, all these kind of things. Very, very simple things to do. And he's doing them, but he can't do them all at once. He's just standing back and says, no, rule of law, and they're all going crazy. So Eric Schmidt, why did he jump off? Because he is culpable for the fact that during Hillary's election and during Obama's election, he created and donated a program called the Template for Election for Hillary through the U.S. Digital Service that worked out of the White House that also was able to change votes. The man in the middle changed the votes. As you said, they do that too, as well as all the other election rigging. But we know that what came up on Google and all the algorithms were changed because Eric Schmidt came out and said, this is who I'm for, and I'm getting you elected. But when Trump did his executive order, and when Trump said antitrust, and when Trump said monopoly, which Peter Thiel says the only tech company that there can be has to be a monopoly. There cannot be competition. Right. He's the leader of all those. He's the smartest of all the cardboard cutouts, right? Eric Schmidt was already as I started on that, he was already with AT&T and Bell Lab and a couple others. When he went over and they said, oh, look, Sergey and Larry, have you ever heard of them again after the moment that they supposedly created it, what they created, which was the greatest thing ever created in all of technology? No. Who came to take over? They gave their company over to Eric Schmidt.
There was Google Glass. There was Google Glass. That was the new Coke of the of Silicon Valley. That was Sergey's big, or Larry, his big moment, Google Glass.
I didn't even hear of it.
But let me ask.
So what happens? Eric Schmidt comes in. He takes over Google, and then they allow the IBM Eclipse social networking material to come. And then what happens? Facebook becomes public and goes from millions to billions. Instagram, all the Google, Gmail, YouTube, all of those all happened within about a year, and they all came out with permissions and certifications from the IBM Eclipse Foundation that says they don't really know where the original patent went that started all of this. It was stolen from Leader Technologies. Now, and that's all been proven. It's already gone to court. In the 11 issues that went to the court, they ruled in favor of Leader Technology. So it's a done deal. So we can take care of all of that by the following. There's a thing called the Miller Act.
Well, let me do this. This is so interesting right now. As I was saying, the Miller Act. I said the Miller Act. As soon as we said that, we went. And by the way,
and you were perfect. There wasn't a single speck before that.
I want you to know something, and this is important. If you want to be a part of the conspiratorium, I have devised, Mr. Payne, a way of speaking to people. And by virtue of having been able to control my internal organs for years, I have been able to use this as a means of speaking. So what I do is, in a series of coded messages, when I have to tell you something that's important, if you get a call at 3 a.m. and you hear one short blast, you will know that we're talking about something that the NSA has yet to decipher. I call it flatulence RS-11 or Flato technology. You've heard of nano? Anyway, thank you for this. I'm going to cobble together the end of this. This was monumental in its scope. I thank you for this. Please, let's do it again. I will take as much as we can before you were extravasated into the ether by whomever, and I'll put this together. But thank you. Now, where can people find you, read you? What is your valedictory, your apopemptic sayonara for those watching right now?
Well, just go to aimfortruth.org. That's where they can find all the articles, and there's actually bridges to our other blogs from there that you can jump over. We also do a bunch of spiritual books, and I'm an educator, so I do.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about spiritual, and I also want to, and I've never had anybody ever explain astrology. I'm open to everything. But I meet so many, what's the word? Dumbasses who don't know anything. And they say, well, I'm in this.
Most of it is junk. People, they don't know.
But when somebody's been doing something for a very long time, tends to be something to it because, after all, remember, if you didn't have a radio antenna, you'd swear there was no radio. So, Thomas Paine, thank you. Give my best to Betsy Ross. Thank you for this. Please promise me we can do this again. Please, sir.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you want. We can do it right now. We can do it anytime you want.
I'm going to call you again.
I'm always ready.
This was just joyous. Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for all of your work. Indefatigable, and your bravery, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, sir. All the best.
Peace out.